Last year I attended a bunch of design conferences and meetups, and pretty much every single one of them had to talk about design systems. I don't know if you've experienced this too, but I got to a point where I was like, okay, it is time. I've got to put a design system in place for the marketing site that I work on at ConvertKit. I actually found it really difficult to come across examples of other marketing site design systems. Most of the content out there was for products or for apps. So I wanted to make this video and walk you through the design system that I have set up in Figma that I work in for the ConvertKit marketing site every single day. Setting up this design system has really helped speed up my process and keep things aligned. It is a lot of work up front, I would say, but I definitely do think it's worth it. So if you've been wanting to put one together, in this video I'm going to give you a bunch of pointers, but I've also put together a free checklist that you can download from my website, linked right there and also in the description. But let's get into it and let me show you what I have set up in Figma for our design system. So this right here is a high-level look at the design system that I have set up for ConvertKit, and don't worry, we're going to go into all of this in detail. I don't know about you, but when I was first getting my head around this idea of creating a design system, it felt really overwhelming, and I think that's because a lot of the examples I'd seen were a lot more involved than what I have here because they were for apps or products, and there's just a lot more that needs to be systematized when it comes to those things, I suppose. But what really helped me get my head around it was something someone said. I can't remember if it was a conversation I had or was it a meetup, I don't know, but it stuck with me. And they said that you probably already have a design system, it's just not documented. And I think that's really true, because when we're working on a website, when we're designing new pages for it, we're not starting from scratch and picking a new font every time or deciding every time what a button will look like. Those things are pretty much set when we are designing within an existing site, right? So you've got a system there already, it's just that it's not all set up in Figma like this. So the first thing that I did to tackle setting up this design system was to do a survey of our marketing website and pull out all of the pieces that I saw repeated across different pages, whether that was buttons or icons or fonts or some little design elements and components. I just grabbed all of those things and dumped them into a design system file that I've called Components and Styles Marketing Site. Basically anything that I save as a style or as a component in this file will be accessible in any other Figma file that I make. And the way you get that is if I demonstrate here with a new blank page. Let's just quickly make a dummy component in it so we've got something. You come into Assets, click on this little library icon, and then what you can do is publish the file. And that means that it'll be accessible, like see all these ones here are that I can turn on or off and access in my designs. So to show you an example without a blank rectangle, this is the design system file like you saw, and this is it in use in one of my working files that I have at the moment. So I've got all of these things that I can access via this side panel, and they all come from this design system file. Make sense? I hope so. Okay, where shall I start with this? I think we're going to start with colors, because that's kind of like the base layer, and that was the first thing that I created for the design system. As you can see here in the title of my document, I've got marketing site, and that is because if I come in here, there is a whole nother design system file for the app that the product designer that I work with, Dylan, uses. So we kept a lot of things separate, but one thing that can be shared between our two design systems is the colors. So I've got them set up in a separate file, and just like I was talking about with the design system file, this is the same way. It's come in here and I've published it so that anything within this file will be accessible throughout the rest of my files. That's one of these little things you can toggle on and off. To get these colors in, basically I just made a block in each of our brand colors, and then saved a fill as a style with the hex code as the name, just to make it easier for if I'm, I don't know, needing to do a landing page within the ConvertKit app or something, I can always know exactly what the color is that I need to be doing. Let me show you a quick example of how to make a color. I'll just come in here and let's pick a random dark red. That's definitely not a brand color. But to save this as a style, I click on these four little buttons here, and then I just click the little plus icon, give it a name, and now it is a style. See how this library icon and also this assets thing now has a little dot? That tells me that there's something I've added that hasn't been published across all of the files yet. So to come in here, I would just have to click publish and it'll be accessible, but I'm not going to do that because I really don't want this dark red. Again, to come into my file and show you this in action, I can click here when I'm adding a fill and see all these color styles, or I can also see it in here as a color palette. Okay, so the next thing that I tackled in our design system was the typography. This works kind of in a similar way to color really, where it's just a line of text that I've saved as a style. And I've arranged it on the page here under H1, H2, H3, whatever, and called them that as well in the styles, just because that helps it align with the code base of our website, and it helps my developer know exactly, what each thing should be coded like. So these were made pretty much the same way as the colors, where I just have a block of text. Let's just detach that for now. Say I want this to be that big for some reason, and then I can come in here and click the plus button, and now we've got a new style. You can also edit styles once they've been made, and this is, I think, where a design system really comes in handy, because say, for example, we decide to change the size of H1s on our website, I can just come in here, edit the style, make the change, and it'll update across all of the files where I've used this type style. Let's go on to icons next. We use an icon font on the ConvertKit marketing site, served through Icomoon. And basically, to get these all in the file, I just downloaded that whole icon font as SVGs and dragged them in. Actually, let me add a new one to it just to show you how that's working. Have I got one that hasn't in here yet? And we're just going to re-add this one just to show you. So drag in the SVG, and in my layers panel, you can see that it comes in within a frame. I'm going to make sure that this is set to constrained proportions, and I'm going to shrink the frame to 32 by 32. Then I'm going to arrange it in my grid. This you don't actually have to do, but I just think it looks nicer to be this way. Then I make it a component, and to do that you can right click and create component, or you can just use the short key as well. But yeah, now this is an icon that I can use throughout my files. Let me show you how that works, because this is where things get pretty powerful actually. So in the side here, I can see all my icons. I can also see it in a list view if I'd rather just, see their names for some reason. But I can drag an icon in. Let's zoom in on it because that was pretty small, and change the color and things like that. But what I can also do if I decide, actually, I don't want this to be a puzzle piece, I need it to be like the photo icon. See over here on the side, I've got this instance drop down. So I can click on this and go to all the other icons, and I can find my photo and change it out. Doesn't keep the color, unfortunately, but still, it's pretty handy to just be able to quickly swap out an icon that you have in place for a different icon if you decide that a different one would suit it best. The way that's working, the way that Figma knows that this is a related component to the puzzle piece that I had in before, is see how it's here under icons? That's because I have all of these components saved within a frame that's called icons. So that's a really important part of setting up your design system, is to put like items on a frame together with a name that you'd want us to be its like folder, I suppose. You can see it in the side here how that's working as well, that these are all arranged under an icons list, these are under components, these are under buttons. So the way you name things has an impact on how you can use them in the system. One last thing about icons before I move into buttons and show you all these things is that I've named them with the same name as the class in our icon font. So again, that just makes it easier when it comes to coding a site, that I don't have to be like, what was the name to get this icon again? It's already right there in the file. Okay, let's dive into buttons, because this is a marketing site, so there is a heck of a lot of buttons. The way that I've done this is using nested components. Let me explain. So down here at the bottom, you can see these things called button shapes. So this is my button large, this is my button extra large, and this is my button rounded. I've then taken one of these shapes. Actually, let's just duplicate one and show you right now. And I'm going to add some button text. And I have a type style that is called button text. So I'm going to use that. Let's arrange it and then group these items. And then I'm going to make it a component. Now, because this component has an instance of another component inside it, are you following me? If I change this one here, which is my main component, let's say I've decided I don't want to do this one rounded corner thing that I've been doing anymore. I come in here, take off that, and did you see here how it changed this button as well? Because it's related, right? So using nested components for the shape of your button means that you can change the button shape and it'll automatically update across different instances where you've used your button. So again, if I take this off and scroll back up here, these were all my one rounded corner buttons as well. This play button, all these different colors, they all had it included. Same with the outline ones, so that when I put it back, it goes back on all of them as well. So that's the first step of setting up buttons, is to make your shape first and use that as the base for adding your text to. But wait, there is more. These buttons get a little bit more complicated than that. If I go within this component here of this large primary button, you can see I've got a couple of different groups. I've got shadow, filled, and outline. So what this is a different style, I suppose, saved within the button so that I can easily switch between. So if I turn this layer on and this layer off, then my button becomes an outline button. And if I turn, let me just zoom in so you can see, if I turn this layer on, then my button will have a shadow behind it, which isn't working well on my outline ones, but that's all right. I found setting it up this way really good because, as you can see at the side here, especially because I normally look at things in icon view, there is a lot of buttons, and so if I had all my outline buttons as a separate component as well that was saved, this would get pretty noisy. So I much prefer just being able to drag this in and then decide I want it to be an outline. So come in here and turn that on. You probably also noticed before when I was demonstrating the difference between these two layers is that all of these different colored versions of my button are also nested. We're going an extra layer deep. So that means that on this one, my main button, if I decide that I want to move the text, it'll also move on all of my other buttons as well. So they're all going to stay connected and I won't have to go and make this type style change on every single different color version. So how I did that was just make an instance of this button, change the color that we've got here in the filled background. Say we're going to make it, I don't know, this random purple. And then save this as a component. With a different name though, obviously, let's not get confusing. So like I said, now I can move this text and it'll move on my new button as well. In my file, I decided to lay out both the filled in and the outline buttons just so I can see it all. So to do that, I've basically just dragged in a version of the component and in the layers panel, turned on the outline version. So that's why you can see in here, this is my main component. It's got this 4 blocks diamond thing and this is my instance of that component, which is an empty diamond. So anything where you see this with the four diamonds making one, that means it's the master, and anything where it's hollow is an instance of that master. It's a place where that component has been used, but you can't edit this one directly in here. I'd have to go to master component to edit it fully. I hope that made sense. That's all my buttons. Got them all laid out here, including all my play buttons, things like that. And like I showed you, really easy to just drag one in from the side and use it in a design. And you can edit the text and what that all looks like as well. So say if I wanted to say video instead. Okay, next section, let's just move on to components. This might sound confusing to you to have this frame label components when I've just been saying that all these are components, all these are components. But I don't know, it makes sense to me. This is my design elements, pieces of design UI that I might want to drag in and use in my designs. As you can see, there's not many of them because, like I already said, for marketing design, I just think that things aren't quite as systematized as things are in products. I tend to be creating new designs a lot of the time, but there are a lot of things that do get repeated, like testimonial quotes and like writing a point next to an icon. So that's what I've made components for in the design system. Just like the other things, these are accessible at the side here, as you can see under my components label. These work pretty much the same way that buttons do, where you just group elements together and save it as a component. So you can see in here I've got an icon of a bar chart, I've got this text, and then I've got this text. And one thing you really want to pay attention to with design element components like this is the responsive constraints. Within this component, my icon is set to stick to the left and top. My title is set to that as well. But this text here is set to scale. So that means that as I shrink in this frame that this component is in, this text will move, but that stuff won't. This is super important to pay attention to because if, for example, I have set this to scale, if I now shrink in the design, that's just not what you want it to look like, right? You don't want your icon to shrink in like that. So yeah, super important to pay attention to constraints. For me, it took a little bit of trial and error to figure out exactly what things to set that as, but yeah, it's worth playing around with and making sure you get it right. This one here, for example, I wanted to make sure that if the quote got a lot longer, let's just put in a bunch more text, for example, and I needed to expand this to move my photo and a byline down, I can just drag the box down and these are set to be stuck to the center and stuck to the bottom. So if I need to expand the quote, they're going to stay in the middle, and I can just shrink this box as much as I like, and that'll stick where I want it. As you saw, this is using an icon, so that is a nested component as well. If I drag one of these into my just like messing around file here to show you, I can use that instance dropdown here on this. So instead of a bar chart, I want to use a chat icon. And now I can change the text. And it just makes it so much faster to be bringing your ideas to life when you've got these building blocks ready for you to work with. Some other components that I have set up, I put them in a different place just because I don't need to access them as often as I do those other design element components, but is our navigation. I made these like I did the buttons with some nested layers inside. I'm just going to put a background on so that you can see what I'm talking about. So I've got the dark nav bar, and then I've also got the light nav bar sitting inside here. So that's easy for me to swap out depending on what I decide to make the background on my page. And I've also got some different versions of our footer. We've got like a simple footer as well as the full version one. And I've laid it out for desktop, tablet, and mobile, which are the main 3 breakpoints I tend to design for. So the reason I don't have to use these very often though, and grab them from the side panel here, is because I have these templates set up. So this is a frame that is the size that I tend to design to for desktop. It's got my grid on it. This is based on a Bootstrap grid because that's what we use on our marketing site. I've got the tablet version and the mobile version as well. It's just kind of a long frame with the footer at the bottom, the navigation up the top. And basically what I do when I want to start a new design is I come to my asset library, I grab the desktop template, drop it in, and then I detach it from the instance. And now I can get going and start adding things into my design without having to like set up the frame size correctly each time. I find it really helpful. I've got a few other things in here. I've got an open graph image for search results, and a Facebook post, an Instagram post, Instagram stories, things I find myself having to design to every now and then. So it helps to have the template already set up here in the design system to just grab it from the side rather than have to look it up each time what size you need to make for Instagram stories. Oh, I forgot to say as well that I have our logos. They were right over here at the start of the design system. These are also saved as components, and I've made use of a naming convention that I also did in buttons and didn't show you, but it works the same, so I'll show you here. See how I've called it long/inverted. Say I add a logo to my page and I want to swap it out, I can use this instance bar here and it'll just show me the inverted, the regular, and the white versions of the logo. See, it's not showing me absolutely everything on this logo page like it was doing for my icons. And that's because I've given it this naming convention to tell it that these 3 are related, these 3 are related, and these 2 are related. And you might have noticed that in icon view it also shows in different categories here on the side as well. So to go back up to buttons, I've got my large buttons, I've got my extra large buttons, I've got my play buttons, and they're all in separate sections. And that just comes from how I named the components, just simply typing a slash in the middle there. All right, I know this has been a long video so far, but thanks for sticking with me. There's just a few more pieces to show you. This one here is some illustrative elements. This is some things that I sometimes like to, I don't know, put behind designs to add a little bit of texture to them. You might see them all over our conference site if you've looked at that. And then the last thing to show you really is this file here, screenshots. So this is screenshots, both a long version and a short version. So you have used the naming convention there for different sections of our app so that I can easily drag that into a design when I need it. And they're just named with what the section is, landing pages, net new subscriber graph, all that sort of stuff. I have them down here on this laptop as well. So in here, this is a nested component where I can come in and using this drop down, change it out to show landing pages on the screen instead. So that's really handy to work with when I'm mocking up graphics and that sort of thing. You do have to have, I'm pretty sure, a team account in Figma, which is the paid account to make use of components. So these sorts of things here. But I'm pretty sure using styles, so like the colors and typography that I had set up, is available in the free one. So that's something you can use even if you're just testing it out and not sure if you want to stick with it yet. And like I think I showed you at the start, but I just want to make absolutely sure I did cover, you enable these and get to use them by clicking on this library icon, and then you can turn on or off the different shared libraries that you want to use. So see here I've got my Charlie Marie colors that I use for my YouTube channel and for my personal website. I have them turned off in ConvertKit files and I turn them on when I'm making a file for my own stuff. I hope you can start to get an idea that having this design system really does help me work faster, and it's all due to how I set it up, how I've named things, how I've organized them, and done it in a way that suits my workflow as well. I've put all the details about how you should think about naming things and ideas for what to bring into your design system, etc., into that free checklist that I mentioned at the start of the video. You can download that at the link down below or on screen right now. Check it out. I hope that it'll help you work through this and set up your own design system for your website. I hope it was useful to see my design system, that you enjoyed that. Give it a thumbs up if you did. And if you're new to my channel, if you're not subscribed yet, then please hit that red button and subscribe, because I make new videos about design every single week, and I'd love to have you back here for the next one. All right, have a good week, everyone. Bye.